What's up everybody, welcome back to a new Unreal Engine 4 video. So I want to do a small mini series about some very basic AI stuff. And the first video I'm going to look at some basic AI movement. Then I got two other videos planned, one for attacking and one for taking damage and dying. So we are going to make like real basic zombie AI, as I like to call it, because you see it often in zombie games and endless survival type games. So this AI can do three things: it can move, it can attack, and it can take damage and die. And it always knows where the player is, it doesn't hide or any stuff like that. So we are not going to use any blackboards or EQS behavior or any advanced stuff. Just a few lines of code and that should do it. So first of all, I've created a third-person example project and I've added the Paragon minions, so we have something to work with. So if you want to follow with the video, just install the minions pack and you are good to go. Now we need to create a few things first. I'm going to create two new folders just for organization's sake, so let's quickly do that. Create an AI folder, and we need to create a character for our AI. So right click and create a blueprint class and select the character. Now I'm going to call this my enemy blueprint. There it is. Let's open this up and let's assign a mesh to this. So I am going to use my minion lane super core skeleton. So that's one of the Paragon minions. Let's click the little searchlight over here. It will go to the asset browser. Now if we go back over to the character, we simply select the mesh and click the little arrow over here. And there we have our mesh. Now let's reposition it quickly. It should be a bit further down, around 85, 86 units. Let's rotate it so it's facing the arrow. And we maybe want to scale it down a little bit. This is quite a big guy, so let's make him a bit more human sized. Let's go for 0.8. That looks decent enough. So there we have our enemy. Now the next thing, we want to create an AI controller for this guy. So go to this folder again, right click and create a new blueprint class. And we are going to search for the AI controllers. Now you can simply select the normal AI controller. You can also use the Detour crowd controller if you're going to plan to have a lot of AI. They kind of move around each other a bit better. So if all of the AI is going towards the same location, they try to avoid each other a little bit better with the Detour crowd controller. So that's where that one is for. Now let's create one, and I'm going to call this the AI controller for my enemy blueprint. And we need to assign this to our enemy, so go back to the enemy character blueprint and go to the class defaults. Now for the auto possess AI option, you want to select both placed in world or spawned. And then you want to select the newly created AI controller over here. So we have that set up. The next thing we need is an animation blueprint. So we have a bit of animation going and it looks a bit better. So what you could do is simply click the mesh over here and click the little searchlight. Now just open the mesh in the asset browser and you can check out the skeleton it's using over here by clicking on the skeleton. So this is the minion lane super skeleton. I'm just going to click the searchlight again. And there we have it. Now right click, create an anim blueprint. And I'm going to call this my enemy animation blueprint. Let's move it to the AI folder. That's a bit more easier to overlook. Okay, let's see, what do we need to do here? We need to open this guy up and add a new state machine in the animation graph. So make sure you're in the anim graph, right click and add a new state machine. and open this up, drag off the entry and add a new state. We're going to add the idle state, and from this drag off again, and we're going to add another state, and we're going to call this walking. Now make sure you drag back again as well, so we can go back from walking to idle. And that's the setup we need over here. Now let's set the animation first, so double click on the idle and look for idle animations. Now make sure you use one of the super animations, so you have ranged and melee paragon minions, so make sure you pick the right animations. So I'm going to drag the idle animation in here, just like that, connect it up, and that's good to go. Open the walk and just look for what we have available in here, the jog. So I'm going to do the combat jog. Combat. Let's check it out, see how it looks. So we got the swords way up in the sky. This looks a bit better, I guess. So jog aggro minion. This one. Let's use that. Connect it up. There we go. So there we have the biggest part of the state machine already. We need one variable though, so let's add one variable over here and call this speed. Make sure it's a float. Compile and save. Now you want to open the first transition rule from idle to walking, and you want to drag in speed, get a getter, and say if speed is bigger than 0, we can make the transition to walking. And the other way, if we want to go from walking to idle, we have to make sure we are not moving, so we drag in the speed again, and we want to drag over here and say equal to 0. Connect it up and we are good to go. Now make sure in the animation graph itself you also connect the state machine to the output pose, so we have that done. And now all we need to do is go into the event graph and make sure we set our speed variable. Now that's very easy. We're just going to drag off the try-cat pawn owner and do get velocity. We need to have a float though, so we're going to drag off here and type vector length. Select vector length, and we can simply use that as our speed variable. So drag in a setter and connect them up like this, and we have our speed variable done. So I think that's going to be the animation graph for now. Let me double check quickly. Yeah, that should be good to go. So we can compile and save this. Let's get rid of it. Let's get rid of the other ones. So we're back in the enemy blueprint. Now select the mesh again, and you want to set the animation mode and the animation class. So make sure it's using an animation blueprint, and now just select the blueprint we just created. So that's our enemy animation blueprint. And there we have our idle animation working. So that's set up and good to go. Now let's set up this guy. Go to the event graph and let's get rid of these two. We're not going to need them. For the first thing we are going to do is create a new custom event. So right click and create custom event. And we're going to call this get enemy. So first we need to add a little delay over here. So let's make this like 1 second. So this is if we spawn in at the same time with the enemy to make sure the player already exists. So if you create spawners for your AI later on, you don't have to worry about this. But this is just because we are spawning them both at the same time, and I want to make sure it's working. So I'm going to add a little delay. Just a little safeguard. So first of all, get all actors of class, and we want to get all third-person characters because that's the player we are. Now, since there's only one player in this level, this is going to be easy. We're going to drag off the out actors and we're going to get a copy of the index 0, and that's the enemy, that's us, that's the player. So we're going to simply drag off here and promote it to a variable and call it my enemy. So because this is a single player game, this is obviously very simple. There's only one player, so you can never go wrong here. If you have a multiplayer game, you could add some logic in here to make sure you divide the enemies over the players evenly and all that kind of stuff. But in this case, it's really simple. So we have our enemies set up. Now we need to create another custom event. Right click custom event. And I'm going to call this base movement. Like so. Now the first thing we need to do here is get an isValid node. So drag in the my enemy, hold Ctrl to get a getter, drag off here and type isValid, get the one with the question mark and connect it up. Now if we are valid, we want to get an AI move to node. So isValid, drag off here and AI move to, get this one. So first of all, for the pawn, we want to get a reference to ourselves and just plug that in here. Destination, we're going to leave that empty. And for the target actor, we are going to drag on my enemy. So that's where we are heading. Let's set the acceptance radius to about 30 maybe. So the AI doesn't really need to bump into the player when it's within this radius. It's getting accepted and the move is succeeded. So just a little thing to smooth everything out. Let's see, what do we need to do next? Drag off from the unsuccess and we're going to add a little delay in here just to show that it's working. And you can also see idle states, and later on it's easier for us to notice stuff if he's also standing still every now and then and he's not chasing us. So add a small delay in here. And over here we want to go back to, let's see, how are we going to do this? Let's drag off the is not valid first and add a delay in here. So if we don't have an enemy, we are going to wait a little bit. Let's wait for 1 second. And after that, we want to loop back to the beginning. So from this, we're going to loop back to the is valid to check again if we can start it over. Now, if we have succeeded, we want to just go back over here. Let me double check. What's the delay? Yeah, that works. And if we fail, we are going to connect it back up here as well. So this way we always have a loop and we should be good to go. So if we have an enemy, we are going to move towards the enemy. If we have succeeded, we are going to wait a little bit, go back over here. If we still have a valid enemy, we are going to move towards him again. If our enemy is not valid, we are simply going to wait and check a little bit later again. And if the move failed, we are also going back and check a bit later again if we can make a move. So that should work. Now go to the event begin play. I'm going to add a sequence over here. And for the first one, I'm going to call the get enemy. And for the second one, I'm going to call our base movement. So that should work. Let's see, what else do we need to do? I want to slow this guy down a little bit because he's going to be all up in my face. So select the character movement over here. And you can set the maximum walk speed in the character movement walking part. So I'm going to set it to 400. That should be good to go. And now there's one final thing we need, but we need to place it in the map. So let's compile and save this and close it down. Let's get our viewport up. And we need to add a nav mesh bounce volume. So let's go over here and search for nav mesh. And you want to add this one, the nav mesh bounce volume. So just drag it into your map. Let's expand this. I'm going to go to top down. Now in the details panel over here, you can change the size in the brush settings section. So I'm going to make sure it covers my entire map. So just expand it over the x-axis. That should be good. Expand it the other way as well. Move it down a little bit. There we go. Let's have a look from the side. So let's make it a little bit higher and move it up a little bit as well. So that should be good to go. Now if we go back to our perspective view and you're in the viewport and you press the P on your keyboard, you can see the nav mesh in action, and everywhere where it's green, the mesh is valid and the AI can walk there. So this isn't a perfect mesh, as you can see, because the pathing over here is going to be a bit glitchy and the stairs itself doesn't look too great either. But we're not going to worry about that at this point. We simply want to have a moving AI. So press P again to make it disappear. And I think we are ready to do our first test. So let's drag the enemy into our map. Put the guy over here. And let's see what happens if we press play. There he is, running at us. And he's following us. If he's close to us, he's gonna stop. And after 2 seconds, he's going to start moving again. So as you can see, he's bumping into us and that's messing up with the camera. So we might want to increase the acceptance radius a bit more. And I want to show you another thing, because right now if I move around him, he's going to face the way he's facing. He's not following me. So we can set his focus to us as well. So let's get out of here and go back to our enemy blueprint. Now, first of all, let's fix the acceptance radius. Let's bump it up a little bit. Let's say 50. Let's see if that works a bit better. And the next thing we want to do is get our AI controller so we can set the focus to the player character. So I'm just going to add another pin to the sequence over here. I'm going to right click in an empty spot and say get controller. And from this, I'm going to drag off and say cast to enemy, the AI controller enemy blueprint. So the one we created ourselves earlier. Connect this up and promote it to a variable. And name this AI controller. So we have access to that. Now go to the my enemy. Go to the get enemy event, and at the end we're going to simply drag in the AI controller we got here, get it, and drag off here and type set focus. And you want to get the AI set focus, so this one. Connect it up to the execution, and now simply drag in the enemy on the new focus. So my enemy is going to be his new focus. And that should work as well. Now I'm going to add this delay and make it 3 seconds so you can see it a bit better. So compile and have a quick look. So he's already chasing us. Let's run away. Now you can see the camera is still bumping into me, so that's annoying. But the focus is working. So as you can see, when he's standing still, he's still facing my way, and also he's following me a bit smoother when I run around, because he is now focused to me. So that's a very basic AI movement for you, and that's all we are going to do in this video. So thanks for watching, everybody, and I'll talk to you later. See you in the next one. Bye bye.